Hello, survivors, and welcome to Wishlist, the first aid spray show where we discuss and get hyped for the latest upcoming Resident Evil release. My name is Sai, and joining me on this episode is Jordan.
Hello.
And James.
Hi.
And we're here to, get hyped for Resident Evil 4 Remake, talk about the things that we'd like to see from the game, talk about maybe some things that we wouldn't want to see from the game, and then get some tasty predictions in as well. I guess there's a couple of caveats with this one because we are recording a weird, kind of an odd spot between the announce of a demo and the demo hasn't come out yet. Just by virtue of wanting to get this ready to go, getting out to our patrons a little bit early before anyone else, as we do with a lot of our stuff. So hopefully in like a week's time, this isn't all completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
But we also found out recently that the Mercenaries is launching separate to the game. So we won't be focusing on that. We're just going to be talking about the main campaign of Resident Evil 4. And if you haven't seen an episode of Wishlist, the way this works is we go around in a circle. Everybody's got something that they'd like to see from the game, something that they would like not to see in the game. And then we'll get some spicy predictions in as well. Cool. With that being said, let's start out positive then. Jordan, what is something that you'd like to see from Resident Evil 4 Remake?
Ooh, right. I mean, there's a lot of things that I would love to see besides everything that we have already seen. Like, I mean, I've been surprised with just how much the rollout of like, media coverage has been for this game. I don't know if it was the same back in the day. I didn't feel like it back then. I felt like I knew about the Pueblo, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Like, every other area was almost like a secret. You could almost take that as the full game. But obviously we know about obviously all the other areas. I'm going to try and go for something a little bit sort of left field. I'd really like to see one area which always kind of came off as slightly the weakest one among the group, get a little bit of a redemption, and that is sort of the island right at the end of the game. I don't know exactly how you'd approach that, because I think that it doesn't quite hit the mark in a few different ways. And when I say don't hit the mark, obviously, look, I love Resident Evil 4. I consider it damn near perfect, but that is one area where, I don't know, it feels like it's over too soon. You take something like the Pueblo opening area, which actually isn't very long at all, and yet it's so memorable, it's so impactful, you do so many different things, you learn so many different things. Problem is that the island comes right at the end. You're pretty jacked with regards to how many weapons you have and attaché cases and just your general experience. And it is all guns blazing, full-on action. So I'd love to see a different spin. Judging by the latest trailer, I'm not necessarily sure if they're going that way. But yeah, I would love to see something where I come out of it at the end of the game and say, wow, I tell you what, the island may actually be kind of ranking higher than it was in the original game. So that's something that I'd love to see. Island redemption.
It'll be
a good point.
It'll be interesting because obviously, I didn't even want to wade into this and I didn't expect to, but some of the complaints about Remake 3, unfounded or otherwise, about some areas being lesser or cut. I don't feel like we've had many redemptions for other areas in any of the remakes. Like nothing has gone from this is okay to this is now great. I guess the hospital, right, in Remake 3, that was one thing actually. So yeah, you could get the same kind of thing here. Absolutely, it is the lesser part. I think that's fair to say. It'll be interesting.
I can't you bring up a great point because I mean I have a bad memory anyway, but the only thing I can think about the island was the initial kind of landing where you fight.
The guy with a big old minigun.
Yeah, in the open area, and you have to kind of dip between the buildings. Yeah, that really have more areas like that. Oh yeah, and there's the little valley as well that you go through. But yeah, it definitely needs more. It definitely needs more work. That. I don't I think maybe just like Jordan said, I think maybe they'll go a little bit too, they will keep a little bit too close to the original game, and not kind of bring more stuff, which kind of goes into what I was going to talk about, which I really, really hate. But
no, I mean that's fair. As an encapsulated thing with the island, I think it's certainly a thing in terms of the rollout of information. I'm not overly surprised that we saw a little bit of the island and we saw a little bit of helicopter. I think you know we talked about this before off mic, but there was certainly some talk going that the island was going to be cut down or maybe even removed from the game. So said some rumors. So I think that stuff was in the trailer to go just as a reassurance, like we are doing everything. But yeah, it's one of those areas where it's because it's lesser iconic. You could absolutely mix it up, add some new stuff to it, change it around, and make it more impactful. So for sure. James, do you want to go next, or?
Yeah, I mean, mine is. I've been talking about it for the past year and a half. I really want Remake 4 to be like kind of the arms that connect RE3 all the way up to Village, or at least 7 and 8. But I mean, if I don't get that, I know that's asking a lot. But if I don't get that, I at least want the remake to have some lore connections to any of the other games, like at all, because it's a huge problem for me with the 2005 RE4. I want to bring up a second the original game scores that this game got. It got like on Steam, it's a 9 out of 10. On IMDb, it's a 9.2. Yes, IMDb does game reviews. It like revolutionized gaming in terms of like the gameplay, but the story is something I would find on a McDonald's burger like wrapper in my local town. So yeah,
like you got some cool McDonald's wrappers, I just have to say.
Well, you don't know what I've seen, but yeah, even if like it just paves the way for further remakes, that's also something I'm kind of cool with. Like if it paves the way for I'm gonna say it, guys, but CV remake and RE5 remake, I'll be even happy with that. Because it's it's just the gameplay is so good and it's hard to mess up because they're basically what they've shown us is exactly the same game in terms of what we're seeing. Right. It's just like been bumped up, and given extra bits and features. It was like, as Jordan said, and a lot of people in the RE fandom, it's considered a perfect game, right? However, if they get the story right, I feel like it would be the best game in the franchise. Like if they get the story right.
Oh, yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the story, like the tone of the remake, is coming across slightly different too. It's a little bit less goofy feeling than the original, which does kind of make it more smoothly fit in with some of the other games, certainly. Because in terms of the mainline games, Resident Evil 4 is still the wackiest to this day, really. Yeah, I can kind of agree with you. There's a lot of issues in conversations. I guess they've died down over the years, but concerns about what's canon, which game, the original, the remake, blah, 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 blah. But at the very least, there is room to do this now when you revisit it in the same way that Darkside Chronicles and RE5, we talked about before, kind of weaved RE4 back into the series after it deliberately kind of departing to be a bit of a soft reboot. But now, yeah, you need those little connections. And more than anything, in RE, I can bring it back to Remake 3 again. There was a weird moment of like, the Nemesis parasite, which hasn't really ever had much of a backstory, is the result of experimentation and investigation based on Plagas. So that means that Umbrella has some knowledge of it. So I'd like to see them at least follow up on that. Don't put it in Remake 3 and then do nothing with it. I don't know if I necessarily like the idea of Umbrella being aware of the Plagas and not doing a whole lot with it. But you've set it up now, so you can't just... It'd be worse to do nothing with that. So, overall, whether it's to the remakes or the originals, 100% down, of course, for more lore contribution.
And it's a dear subject to my heart. Like, and in terms of like Resident Evil, it's very similar in terms of how that it's not as in my opinion, it's not as kind of in the same wheelhouse as Alien, right? But they are trying to kind of lay these vague storylines down, connections, so then people can talk about them, like they did with the Nemesis, and they did with the original games as well. Like they just gave you these little snippets of information that you could probably link up. I like that, and we all like in modern age, like people love doing that. They love connecting all the dots and stuff. Especially with games such as like Dark Souls and other like FromSoft games where like the story is kind of vague and you have to kind of piece it together. And they were seeming on the RE Village podcast I was talking about, but they were seeming to try to do that with RE Village as well. Yeah, and it was. Yeah, it was whether it was successful or not. I think it was a little bit too successful because I now know that we probably won't get any of those connections that I've been thinking about, right? Just due to the DLC that we got. But it's nice to think about and putting those as a story writer. It's nice to put those things in and just think about them.
A question for you both. This could almost be a whole other separate discussion with regards to Resident Evil as a whole, but kind of bouncing off that subject, with this being the third remake, and practically sort of in a row, like how fast they've come.
Yeah.
This is obviously quite consistent output. Do you think then that first of all there are more remakes in the works or on the way, and also do you think that Capcom has like more of a longer term roadmap that they're looking at here? Because it's quite substantial when you look at like the connection from Resident Evil 2, 3, 4 in the remakes. You can see that there's more consistent characterization going on. They're clearly sort of understanding that they want to carry on all of these character stories in quite a sort of consistent fashion. So yeah, do you think that maybe they do know where they're going to be with Resident Evil as a series, especially in terms of the remakes, in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm in a weird. Oh, go on, James. You go first.
Yeah, I think they do. I think there is a board somewhere, either on a PlayStation, on a PC or whatever, like where they have a general idea, like of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
My theory with Resident Evil is that basically the reason why they've done this and they've put so much time into it is because they're trying to appeal to new fans. Like, because we were starting to see that, around the early 2010s, that Resident Evil was starting to kind of pitter-patter out, like a little bit, right? And, it was only diehard fans, really, and a couple others who were, like, buying into the game, like, or the franchise. But with Resident Evil 2, the remake, that we've seen this huge boom of new players and new people in the community. So I think, like, it would be really silly if they don't take advantage of that and they haven't written some kind of or put down any kind of plan that's going to happen. And I do expect as well, this is kind of a wild take, but I do expect in like the next 12 to 15 years, we might even get more remakes, like of the remakes potentially. Because like it would be a good base. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years, but it'd be good business practice for Capcom to bring people back. Like, because we all get bored and like of Resident Evil to a point. At some point it's going to run out of content, but yeah, I do think they have a plan. I don't think it's like very deep in depth,
right?
I think there's just tags and they're just like, yes, okay, we'll just connect those dots, we'll leave Sherry in the corner.
They're going to run out of content in about 12 years, but they're still not going to remake Outbreak.
Yeah, I have a very similar sort of mindset on that, because on the one hand, I kind of don't want it to be the case, because, where does it end? Like, at the rate they're putting them out, we're going to have RE6 remake in a few years, which is ridiculous. But yeah, these remakes have brought in new fans. They are financially profitable. Like, even though people complain about 3 remake, it's done great numbers, and 2 remake is springing right along to being the #1 game in the series at this rate. And this is going to do, crazy numbers.
Yeah.
So that, plus the fact that the concepting stage is way less intensive when you're doing a remake, surely, to some extent, they can just keep popping them out. So yeah, to be honest, all of those contributing factors tell me that yes, they probably don't have a plan for the main series.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
We can remake this, and this at least. So yeah, I am expecting 5, because if nothing else, we haven't seen Chris and Wesker in the RE engine yet. So I feel like they probably want to do that. Good point. Yeah, there you go.
I think it's a bit of that. I think that it's probably a mixture of them having maybe at least a 5-year plan, and then also I think they're flying by the seat of their pants a little bit in the fact that I don't think they necessarily anticipated that Remake 2 and Remake 3 were going to be as successful as they were.
Yeah, sure.
I think they knew that there was obviously still such a great love for the original remake. But yeah, I don't think they necessarily knew what they were doing when they first put that game out.
Mhm.
And now I think they look at it and they are riding what is ultimately now a very financially safe option, which is to, you know, ultimately Resident Evil 2, 3, 4 are all iconic, so it's really easy to remake them. And obviously they're doing it in a manner that is really not that divisive. Like, I mean, people might have quibbles about the other previous two releases, as they will about this game. But I have not necessarily sort of seen such kind of division that they would see it as a risk. How they develop it, it kind of really just feels like they've got a free pass with this one.
Yeah.
And I wonder then where they then go with it with regards to 5 and 6, and yeah, especially Code Veronica. But we might end up getting into that in prediction, so I won't go any further. Than that, but
Sure,
I do think it's a bit of a mixture. Maybe a
Yeah.
5-year plan based on success, but the success keeps coming, so the remakes will as well.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, the thing that I want from RE4R is a gameplay thing. And I kind of picked up on this. It's something that is actually kind of already in the game, but I'm really excited to see what they push with it. In the Game Informer videos that have been doing the rounds recently, there's a moment where Leon sort of skulks up behind a Ganado and gets a stealth kill. Now,
Yep.
correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think stealth kills were in Resident Evil 4 original, because crouching wasn't in Resident Evil 4 original. Crouching hasn't even been in the remakes until now. It's only in RE4. Well, I say it's only in RE4R because the Village had it, right? Because it's a first-person game. You swap that to third-person, that has to still stay in there because it's part of the engine. But this is the first time we see it in a over-the-shoulder remake. So I'm excited about what exactly that means for stealth, because we never really had a whole lot of stealth in Resident Evil, and
No.
I'm not massively into games where the stealth is super important, and if you suck at it, then too bad, I guess. But I like it to be
the
an
choice.
option.
Yeah.
Right, I like it to be an option. I like that stealth kills are in there, and it made me think about the fact that, and here's a deep cut, in the public beta for Resident Evil 4 in the code is the silencer. And I think the silencer shows up in Mercenaries. I think Wesker's got it. But in terms of the campaign, it was coded to be in the main campaign of RE4 and didn't actually make it. Whatever it does, whatever it's for. But it makes sense here. So pick that back up. Some of the remakes have brought back some ideas that got cut. Bring the silencer back. Let us silence our handguns or whatever. You've got your stealth kills. You've got silenced kills. Throw in, chucking objects one way to distract a Ganado and sneak in by to conserve your ammunition and, bring up that survival horror feeling of, I don't want to waste these shots, I'm going to throw a can against the wall or whatever. I know a lot of games have done that, but again, it's just another thing that you slot on. You go, this is an option. This is an option for something that you could do. So that little bit of video of Leon sneaking up and, stabbing a Ganado in the back of the neck and killing it in one go, I was like, that's kind of interesting. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I think there's potential for fun with that.
Certainly makes it more survival based, really,
Right.
because
Yeah.
it suggests the idea that you're not always going to have a boatload of ammunition to hand to be able to sort of take out enemies however you see fit. I certainly like that idea because stealth it has always sort of been just sort of to decide whether it's just it's usually like a sort of side level or sort of side
Right.
mission where it features a secondary character
Yeah.
that has less weapons than you. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, especially this Leon. This Leon that is far different from Resident Evil 4 original Leon.
Right.
And how they sort of approach it. Of course, I say that knowing that the latest trailer shows suplexes. So I mean,
I mean,
Again, the beauty of choice.
yeah, you can have whatever Leon you like. He can be your Angle or your Devil.
I was just thinking about that because I was thinking about like they are definitely, even with the moves that he does, the melee moves that he does, it feels more grounded in like the real world than it does like the original RE4 did, where steadily as you got through the game he had a different move for some reason. Like it was very strange, but yeah. I do like kind of the moves they've added. They feel very real and they feel like they could actually be done, whereas for some reason Leon just did butterfly kicks and stuff.
Right.
Well, almost. I to speak about stealth as well, like I hope like when we get, if there is an Ashley section, I hope that, because you just made a great point about like kind of, because the Ashley section is a a stealth option. Well, it's not an option.
Sure.
It's a stealth level that's kind of thrown at you, and you have to kind of go into it. But I hope that isn't the case in this game. I hope that because as it will go on to something I explain later on. But I hope that Ashley can fight back, and it isn't just
That'd be cool.
yeah. Isn't just stealth, because oh god, I hate stealth levels. It's like water levels. It's like
Right.
I want the, as you said, I want the choice. I want the choice between.
That's what it comes down to.
It's so cool. Like let's bring up Last of Us for a second. Like Last of Us 2, like being able to, because it's normally an initiation. Stealth is like going in, killing somebody, and then maybe getting alerted, and then going back into hiding. Like, or you could just do what I normally do, which is just like a ball through a Chinese shop. Is just you stab and then you kill everybody. Like it's having that choice, that agency there is important.
And
That Hitman level of freedom.
Yeah.
You
That would be
just
crazy.
kick everybody out, or you can be complete ghost going through a level. But yeah, you don't like water and you don't like stealth, James. So I guess you really don't like MGS2.
I don't. I can't. I really wanted actually to be. It's just a little bit behind the scenes. I really wanted to be on the Metal Gear Solid stream podcast. I couldn't play the game. I couldn't play it.
It's
so
fine, James. It's fine. Just find the right McDonald's burger wrapper and
Yeah.
you'll find the plot line on it somewhere. So it'll tell you the story. The choice is everything when it comes to that. To like one last note about it, that I just realised is in that Game Informer interview they said, or they implied that a knife run is probably not possible for the first time ever, but you can replace that, make it a stealth kill only run, or maybe there's a way to do that. Maybe that's what replaces it. That could be cool. But yeah, there you go, stealth. So let's flip the coin to the negative side, things that we don't want to see from Remake Thor. I think, before we recorded, we all pretty much had the same thing of, I don't really know what to say. Like, it's looking pretty great. But James, what's the one thing from RE4R that you don't want?
So it is only one thing, because I put another list on this after this, my top thing, and I couldn't finish it because it was like, no, I can't. I don't, because it looks great. But yeah, I want I want the dialogue to be better. The misogyny and ignorance is horrendous in RE4. You got quotes such as, I knew you'd be fine if you landed on your butt. Even but just bad dialogue in terms of the way it's said, like when Leon Kennedy shouts Lewis instead of Luis.
Yes.
But just a quick positive, I do want them to keep a variation of Where's Everybody Gone Bingo, because it's just such a classic. But yeah, there's a lot of, it feels the original in terms of the dialogue and the story in a way, and how it plays. It feels like a teenage boy's wet dream, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm super hot, buff, and I'm going through here, and all the ladies love me. It was like
That crowds are all right.
it didn't. I said this on the RE4, but it didn't feel like Leon Kennedy for me. So I couldn't connect to that character as much, even though I love the original RE4. But yes, just tighten up the dialogue. And from what we've seen so far, there's a great line that we've seen where Luis is going through this with Leon behind him, this tight corridor, and he says something, thinks a quote, and Leon just goes by him and says, "Don't hurt yourself," and just takes the weapon off him.
It's a Don Quixote quote or reference, isn't it? It's something really clever.
And it was just from that scene, I got a really good idea about how Leon is going to be. He's just fed up. He doesn't really want to be here, and he's just, it is a nice side of Leon to see after the horrendous things he's gone through, in the previous games. I can really feel like I can get into that character more and be immersed into that character more with what I've seen. But yeah, improve the dialogue. It's bad.
I think on that point, this feels more like weirdly more like a sequel to RE2 than the original RE4 felt like a sequel to the original RE2. Like because it's only been a few years as well, you can very easily draw that line. It's the same Leon voice actor, so yeah, like the characterization is probably going to make a lot more sense. And quite simply, it's been really good in the RE engine era. We keep banging on about it. The characterization, the script, generally speaking, have been pretty great in the remake. So I've high confidence in this.
It will be interesting if, like, I don't know. I think they'll be too tempted to not, like, leave some of those really cheesy lines in. Like, your right hand comes off and stuff like that. Like, I think it's going to be too hard to maybe sort of ignore those kind of nods. Although it's funny to think, because I agree. I absolutely want it to be more consistent with Remake 2 and Leon in Remake 2. I think that works much better, because it always felt quite jarring to kind of go from one Leon to another and wonder what the hell happened in between.
Yeah.
Even if you go and play the Wii games and like they try and explain it to you, it still doesn't quite explain it. You either end up falling on one's characterization of Leon or the other.
Yeah.
So this is looking like the most sort of tangible, sort of direct connection from one to another and making sense. So it'd be funny if this Leon ends up being sort of in this remake universe, as it were, ends up being the more meek version of the character, whereas Jill Valentine is the one that's like shouting expletives and telling Nemesis to suck it, and it's my turn bitch and all of that kind of stuff, and just turning foul mouthed. So it'll be interesting to see exactly where sort of like this Leon exactly lands. Although, I think Jill might be the one that's got all the one-liners going forward.
That's right.
Let's hope so.
I do wonder.
I
wonder about the bingo line. I can hear Louise saying like, "What did you expect? They all went to bingo." Like another way to get it in there.
Yeah. Like
same with the right hand thing, maybe.
It's like it's just I like. And he could say those lines, like, and just deliver them in a way that's more Leon. Right. Or as you say, like he's talking to somebody else or something. Yeah. I'm excited to see the interactions between him and Hunnigan.
Right.
As well.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the relationships between the characters are really interesting to think about. And I think the sort of banter between Luis and Leon is probably going to bring out some more of Leon's quip side, perhaps. So, cool. Jordan, you want to go next for something you don't want?
And this is, I suppose, this is a bit of an easy one, really, and has almost entirely been confirmed as true. But just to stick it in there, just to make sure it absolutely happens. No QTEs, preferably no boat at the end either. Just generally, I want to see less trial and error. And again, I say this, having seen the third trailer, the most recent trailer, which features a minecart section. Now, far be it from me to say that I don't like minecart sections, because I love Donkey Kong Country.
There it is, yeah.
It is a little bit sort of jarring, because I went from the end of January, the Game Informer article came out, and they confirmed that there weren't going to be any QTEs, or at least very minimal QTEs. That's music to my ears, because back when we did the Resident Evil 4 episode, I said that this game is near perfect, with the exception of the QTEs and the boat at the end, which I just thought it was... There's no skill to it. It is just remember which side you need to have the boat on, or you just need to obviously be fastest fingers on the buttons and stuff like that. It kind of takes away, because if you do mess it up, it just feels a bit laborious to do it again. So that's what I could come up with. That it's just those little things about the original that if they were to follow this quite faithfully otherwise, but got rid of that, I'd be pretty damn happy, because I just wouldn't have to deal with QTEs. It's obviously, it's nerve-wracking when you're actually facing Krauser, sort of like out in the sort of the battlefield, as I'd sort of call it, rather than the sort of the cutscene battle where it's a lot of QTEs. So yeah, that's all I can really say. I really struggled with this, but thankfully it does look like they're going to be scrapping those for the most part.
Yeah, I think I've only seen one QTE, but it didn't feel very solid as a QTE in terms of like that was all they're gonna do.
Not just a prompt.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Like obviously we've seen a little bit of a look at the Krauser boss fight, which excitedly does look like it's all about your actual in-game parries instead of just a big QTE sort of cutscene, which is cool. Yeah, I can get behind this. The QTE thing, like, it doesn't make sense anymore. It's just to sort of crowbar them in because they were in the original would be really weird. So, yes, please, 100% completely agree, basically.
What don't you want, Si?
I'm going to go really obvious. I had a couple of choices, but I'm going to go really obvious because nobody said it. I don't want that rain. Can we change the rain? There's a couple weeks left.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think he'll be fine. I don't know what was going on there, but I think it'll be.
I hope that's not the finished version.
Did it look like that anywhere besides Twitter, or is it just Twitter's horrible video?
No. On YouTube,
yeah, we've
on the Game Informer video, it's really bad. The drips of rain are like this long. They're horrendously lit. Going into certain animations, they get even more lit. It's bizarre. And actually, weirdly, it's the same clip with the stealth kill, but Leon sort of goes, pushes something out of the way and goes under this kind of like awning to come out and do the stealth kill. When he goes under the awning, the rain stops, and when he comes out, it starts again. And stuff like that. It's like, what? How can this be in a modern AAA video game, let alone something of this caliber that you really need to pay care and attention to? So I really hope that they were playing like an old version or whatever. It comes as a day one update because, I genuinely, with like graphic stuff, as most people know, I'm not really that precious about it. But this is something else entirely where if that rain is like that a lot in the game, it's seriously going to detract from my enjoyment of it because it completely ruined the mood in those videos for me.
It will. I legitimately, when I was watching those videos, I got a headache because of that.
Yeah, I can believe it.
Like,
I can believe it.
It was like it was like it was a an LSD trip. It was like I was trying to focus through. And I say all they need to do. I don't know game dev, right? But I mean, the rain just needs opacity, like bring it down, like because I couldn't. It just looked like shards of ice falling from the sky. It was wild.
It always surprises me how easily video game rain gets messed up. In even big titles, big games made by Rockstar or Nintendo or other likes of that, it kind of it always feels like one of those effects that there should have almost been like a line in the sand in terms of
we figured this out.
Yeah, video game technology where it's just like from that point you don't have to worry about it. It's like that and realistic acting mirrors in video games. They always seem to have slight issues that make them seem like maybe they're from the PS2 era all of a sudden.
And then we got Parasite Eve, which can do mirrors fine.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, that's the thing, of course. The rain obviously reminded a lot of people of the GTA Definitive Edition, which was terrible.
Yeah.
The problem is, as you've just said, like we should have standardized this across all of gaming. Capcom did it fine 4 years ago with Remake 2. The rain in that's great. So, like, what happened? Like,
well, you see, Leon's
rain in Spain is not exactly the same as etc.
He's in a higher elevation. If you know meteorology, you should know, how it works. God.
Look, not everything transfers over from Remake 2, okay? We're getting the same Leon. We're not getting the same rain.
Damn it!
I guess so. Okay, cool. So let's do some tasty, bold predictions. Mine is not actually. I don't feel like it's that bold. But I'm going to start anyway and get it out of there. I think that there is going to be a cooperative element to the campaign. I think it's probably a sure thing in Mercenaries, but I also think there's possibility for it in the campaign because starting from RE5 onwards, we had games with characters pretty much paired up, and the only one that from that era that wasn't multiplayer was Revelations, and it feels, and the reason for that being that it's a 3DS game originally. RE5 had notoriously bad AI, but the game's a lot better if you play with a friend. Same thing, sort of thing with 6 and stuff like that. Revelations 2, where you could flip between the characters. But we've seen a lot of scenes in that last trailer where it seems like Luis survives a lot longer, and he hangs out with you and fights monsters with you for a lot longer. So they better hope that AI is solid, and or you can jump in. Maybe not every chapter. Maybe it is like RE6. Where if it just happened that you could go online and someone else was playing that chapter, you can opt to play as Luis and just join a person and help them. Who knows? Maybe there's chapters where it's Leon and Ada when Luis is no longer about, or whatever. But I have a feeling, and maybe it doesn't launch, maybe it comes later as an update. But there's room there for them to do a co-op campaign element to Resident Evil for the first time since Revelations 2, which is 8 years ago, 7, 8 years. So
yeah. I think so. Yeah, it is. Yeah, 8 years. Yeah, definitely. Because
controversial, maybe, but
no. I want that. Definitely want that. Like totally, and it would make sense. Like, and you get the choice of which, because we've only seen Ashley and Luis in the trailer so far. It'd be really cool to play as Ashley, as well potentially. Yeah, or even Ada. Like maybe when you get halfway through. I was thinking when you said that thing about about people dropping in when they get to a certain section. I was thinking, I can't remember his name. I think it was First Light or something. Dark Souls 3 DLC Ring City. There's a boss in it where basically, if you're in the area, in that area, you can just be randomly teleported to somebody else's world, and you are the boss. And they have to fight you, right? Yeah. And it was really cool. It was also kind of wonky sometimes because sometimes people were just, I can't be arsed with this, just kill me, Right. But it was still really cool. It'd be really cool if that, because it also harkens back to RE6 with the the monster system.
Exactly. RE6, you could drop in and be a monster in somebody else's game. It was kind of dumb because it was very short-lived, because once you were dead, it was over. But RE6 also had the ability to, if you were playing through a certain character's campaign, you would get to a certain point where they meet someone else, as happens a few times throughout that. If someone else is online and playing that campaign and it meets, those times arrive perfectly, 4 people potentially would be taking down the same boss as opposed to 2.
That would be good.
So something like that where you're playing the game and you've got this setting on, and you can maybe swap over and join somebody. There's potential there. I don't know how possible it is or how likely it is, but it's certainly something that came to mind watching that footage.
It's definitely possible, but whether they want to or can.
Yeah. James, go ahead.
So I know Sai and I are going to have things to say about this because we were discussing it when the State of Play came out. But I want to first talk about agency. We've spoken about it earlier on, and it's something that is very important to the early games of Resident Evil. And I do believe that people on the internet get mad at the wrong things when it comes to the most recent games. Like, I think people are actually mad that they don't get choice anymore because the most recent games don't give you any. Like, in terms of, like, when you're going through a campaign, you don't get any choice at all. About where you go. Whereas with the original games, you got a lot of choice. Like 1, 2, and 3, you got choices all over the place. Like about where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do. But the most recent games are pretty linear. I think, and I really hope, because of the most recent State of Play, we saw Luis there. It would be really dope if we got the choice to save Luis in some way. And it would be cool if maybe there's a choice to kill Ada, or Ashley dies. Like it's or to save them. Giving us that choice back, I think will really speak to the community quite loudly. Because it started to change a little bit with RE4. There was still some change in that game, but not enough. So it would be like that's when kind of games started, like the RE games just were like, no, now we're just doing this linear story. You don't, even though the changes don't really have a huge impact, they still, you want to be immersed in that world, and choices and agency give you that that immersion. So I want more agency and choices in Resident Evil 4, and I think like Luis, if maybe in conjunction with your prediction, Sai, maybe if you do save Luis, that is the moment where you could be brought into somebody else's world for a co-op adventure, maybe. So that's
I completely love that because it's such a throwback to sort of classic Resident Evil, like RE1 when it came out. Mind blowing for the potential choices and the number of endings in that game and stuff like that. That was just, it's really interesting. And the thing about this is, if it happens, you'll get loads of people being like, well, now we don't know what's canon if Ada can die and Luisa. It's like, yeah, you do. Just think about it. Like, who appears in the further games?
Yeah.
If they do or don't, then, you know, you make up your own mind. But if they do, then they survive. And again, it comes back to RE1 never had really that much of a canon story, like in terms of what plays out on your screen. None of that actually happens. A bunch of people come into a mansion and come out again. Like, the actual way that plays out on your screen is not necessarily the canon, you know, hence the sort of canon project of RE1. But yeah, you could absolutely do that with RE4, put it up there with those kind of games and that amount of choice. And I think there is going to be more choice overall because there's this sort of side quest element that apparently is being thrown in there, which kind of implies a bit more backtracking and going places at your own discretion. But big choices like that would be awesome. That would really separate it from the last bunch of games for sure.
I think like Village only gave you a taste of it. And not enough, in my opinion. Even though that's like one of my favorite games.
Yeah.
It only gave you a taste of it.
7 as well has a choice at the end, doesn't it, about who you can say, but it doesn't really make a big. It doesn't really make a big impact.
Yeah, like with Village, it's still kind of linear because you're still going to go back to the village and you're still going to beat that big Varkalak, and you know if you really want to. That's as far as like the choice goes in that game. But we need more.
Yeah. Do you fight the optional boss?
Yeah,
for sure. Cool. Right, Jordan, you're up. What's your spicy prediction?
Well, first of all, I find it sort of like fascinating that sort of Lucera has ended up sort of like casting quite a large shadow over this particular segment. It really got me thinking as we were sort of talking about it. It's true, sort of like, why not reevaluate exactly how you treat that character, especially all these years later? I mean, I was only talking to good friends of mine with regards to this game and what we hope to see and changes, and you know, one of the things that was sort of wild to sort of look back at was that I don't think there's any other sort of like playable Luisera besides this remake. Like in the original game, I don't think it was even in the Mercenary.
It's not even no.
So that, despite the fact that he's not in the game for very long, and despite all of that, has become this very memorable character that people have been, you know, just dying to see in this remake. Almost like looking forward to seeing Lewis as much as they wish to see Leon or Ashley. And that's really cool to see. And I wonder if, like, maybe Capcom, maybe I'm getting a little bit too hopeful here, maybe Capcom does actually look at it and say, you know what, does Lewis have to die, canon-wise? Does he? Maybe we can change that. We're going in slightly different directions. Yeah. So... it could certainly kind of expand into further games. I do think I'm being a little bit hopeful there. I you know, we could talk all of this up, and then I sit down at the end of March and you know, start playing it, and it's like, oh no, he's definitely a goner. With regards to predictions, I mean, I think that like there were a couple of safe predictions. Like, you know, definitely going to happen. It's going to be very close to the original Resident Evil 4, I think. I think its DNA will more or less be 90% accurate with a couple of deviations, and that's great. And it's also maybe a little bit limiting. It might be a little bit hard to kind of judge this game as its own thing when it's being compared to the original and also trying to be very much like the original. I've kind of, from everything that I've seen, I would prefer it to have maybe deviated a little bit more than it appears to be, but who knows? Obviously, a demo is coming out soon, and the game's, you know, coming not long after that, so it might be that my mind's changed entirely by the actual final product. I do think there will be more series teasing this time. I wouldn't be surprised if Capcom feel a little bit emboldened kind of going into this third remake and sort of looking at it as, well, let's really tease people. Let's really kind of get people in the, you know, mood for possibly looking at least 3 more remakes. You can kind of go into this game with the knowledge of the whole series that has come before it. And you can maybe kind of like just pepper the game in some kind of way that kind of hints or points towards future entries or future developments and stuff like that. More kind of crossover in the lore and such. I fully expect that to happen. And now for a sort of almost a non-prediction, but I will say it anyway, just in case it might actually.
Got to manifest it, Jordan.
I want, and I'm going to manifest it. Yes, I want a chainsaw controller. Bring it back.
Oh, that'd be so good, wouldn't it?
It's like, come on! It's like people spend all sorts of money on controllers these days. I want a big, stupid chainsaw controller, especially if it's got a little sort of, like pull cord to actually start rotating the blades or something silly, right? Because that is an iconic gimmick controller.
Yeah.
I have seen it in stores. I've never held it myself. But it is just sort of like it's so sort of bewildering, and it's funny because at the time they were kind of just throwing it out again as a joke. It was just sort of like, right, it comes in this sort of special box, but it is just sort of we're going fully in on this one character that you see in the game. I would love that. I think it's a little bit too late for that, but who knows? They might just out of nowhere announce it in the next month. I don't think so.
They have. I can't remember who said it on the team, but they said that it's not out of the question.
Okay, yeah. There we go. There we go. We just gotta get this video to them.
Yeah, like RE4R is going to play on a lot of people's nostalgia, and that controller is, nostalgic for a lot of people, whether they use it or not. Like yourself, Jordan, I have used it. One of them, it was awful, terrible, but yeah, you should do it. You should absolutely do it. Yeah, there are a lot of controllers and stuff out these days, but there's no funny, wacky, gimmicky stuff anymore like there used to be. And yeah, you could absolutely play into both of those angles.
That is a collector's edition I would buy.
Yeah, so would I.
Absolutely buy that.
Yeah, for sure. I would absolutely get that. Yeah, it was such a weird, interesting part of RE4 that people do fondly remember. And Village had a really interesting lead up with like the puppets and stuff. So that is an interesting angle, to promote RE4. It is a little late, so I don't expect it, but my God, I want it. Also, when you're saying remake, teasers for other remakes, if there's a Survivor tease in this game, I will lose my mind.
It's not even like a tease, it's just literally like it's just a placard or something that just says, by the way, we're making Survivor.
So Ark Thompson was here. Amazing. Okay, cool. Well, that is our wants, do not wants, and predictions. Before we close out, what's everyone's hype level at? James, how are you feeling? How excited are you for RE4R?
Yeah, it's at the same level as Village was at right now. Yeah, and that was maximum hype for me. I was so excited for that game. I was saying to a couple friends a few days ago about I think this might be another game where I might actually get on Twitch and stream again for another 48 hours.
Yeah, let's do that.
Complete it twice because it's like a very long game, right? And then maybe try a speed run. But yeah, I'm very excited for this. The thing that got me so excited for this game so far from what they've described, other than like, yeah, sure, when they showed they spoiled all the characters and stuff, I was like, yeah, that's fair, whatever, right? But the thing that's got me really excited is all like the little passive things, all the little things you can play with, like builds you can mess with. That stuff I love. So yeah, hype is at maximum right now.
Jordan, how you feeling?
Well, my hype level is it's been kind of like I've felt very sort of satiated with sort of everything that's come out to the point where, like, when you get to that point when you're looking forward to something and you're going to enjoy it and you're not going to check it out as soon as it releases, that you just say, okay, that's it. I'm not going to watch any more sort of footage or really kind of connect with it. Obviously, I've had to kind of indulge in that for this video so that I can kind of get a list of things which haven't already been confirmed for the most part. And so at this point, I'm kind of the best kind of analogy I can say for my hype level is kind of a bit like when you're maybe a few weeks away from going to a concert that maybe you bought tickets for about a year ago or something like that. Maybe you're just starting to kind of listen to the songs, but you don't want to get too overhyped. You don't want to kind of like saturate yourself. It's almost like you want to just sort of sit blind for a couple of weeks, and then it's those like leading hours before the concert, before they come on stage, all of a sudden it kicks in and you're like, holy crap, here it is. It's Remake 4, it's happening. So that's where I'm at right now. It's very calm, but it's mainly because I'm kind of like, I haven't had to like worry about like the development of this. I've known it's been in safe hands from the very get-go. Yeah. And so, yeah, I've just been sort of sitting back and sort of enjoying the time and sort of like killing a bit of time in between. I mean, the Metroid Prime physical release of the remastered game is coming out this week. So I will be sort of like indulging myself in that and kind of keeping my mind off.
Yeah,
keep my mind off Remake 4. But the thing is, once it will once it will come out, like I'll be straight on it. And it, again, I think it will just sort of like it'll hit me hopefully in much the same way that the original did, and I'll just be like, yeah, this is why I love the beats of this game so much, and this is why I love this setting so much, and these enemies so much, and these bosses so much. But for now, it's just sort of quiet, reserved, as best as I can be. Yeah.
Nice. I am trying to be like that. I'm trying not to bounce off the walls too much, but I know come release day, having bought the physical version, I don't know when that's going to come through my mailbox. I got the day booked off. I'm going to be pacing around my house trying to find some way to distract myself until it's actually here. This is a weird one, obviously, because I've said this before. You know, Resi 4, the original, when it came out, I didn't have a huge to-do about it. It was not really for me. So I think mostly what it comes down to is now I get to have that experience. I get to be excited about it this time because I can appreciate it now where it sits in everything. So yeah, it's nice to allow myself to be excited for this. This might be, weirdly, the Resident Evil game that I've been most excited for a very long time.
Wow.
A very, very long time.
Wow.
Probably more than Village.
What about 7?
Yeah. 7 I just kind of stumbled into because I was a little bit disconnected from the series at the time. So
It's fair.
and it was such an unknown, right? So it was hard to be completely excited about it because it was like, this is weird, right? And same thing with Remake 2. I was like, I don't know if I want this. Like, what if they mess it up? And Remake 3 just came out of nowhere, so it's you can't get excited for it. But this has been a long lead up, and I've had time to sort of have it sit with it. So yeah, for sure, this is the most excited I've been for a Resi game in a very long time.
We've had like whispers about this game for at least 4 years, I feel like.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even before it was kind of whispers, we were all going, is it going to happen? Isn't it going to happen? Once the remake started trickling along, it seemed like,
then like every year we're getting like updates from fans who have created like, you know, add-ons, HD add-ons and stuff, like and stuff for the game, and it was like, oh man, it seems like it's just ramping up for something. Even though it's only the fans doing it, like you don't see that often with stuff. Yeah. I really hope there's I really hope there's fishing in it. Give me a fishing minigame.
That'd be great.
With the cat.
Yeah, if you put a fishing minigame in it, every game that has a fishing minigame is the best game ever made. So it has
to sell with fishing. I want to see it.
I was gonna say, I'll come back to the John West run, right? That's gonna happen. Let's stream a John West run. Listen back to our RE4 podcast if you don't understand that reference. Okay, cool. Those are our wants, do not want, spicy predictions, as it were, for RE4 Remake. Let us know what you expect from the game down in the comments below, how excited you are for it. Make sure you subscribe for just general Resident Evil content, but of course our podcast will be coming hot on the heels of the release, so you'll get to hear our thoughts immediately, or as soon as immediately as we can do. Jordan James, thank you for joining me, and thank you for watching. Have a good week.
Bye.
Oh, it's warm in this thing.